Hi, welcome to the Stitch TV show. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Pam. We're happy you're joining us today. The Stitch is an online quilting talk show, the perfect soundtrack for your sewing room. Join us as we talk about stuff and also some things and maybe some quilts.
And current topics in the quilting world, how to improve your technique,
Tips,
projects, stories about our quilts.
Our episodes come out twice a month, complemented by virtual stitch-ins and podcasts. You can learn more at thestitchtvshow.com. Today, we are accompanied by the layer cake version of our pattern, the stripper's knot. We are going to be talking about tackling curved piecing and also how to measure progress in quilting. So, Lynn, Valentine's Day is upon us once again.
It is.
Now, we're a couple of old married farts, not to each other.
No.
FYI.
True.
How do you guys usually celebrate?
We go out to dinner.
Like on the day, or do you like just pick the closest weekend?
Pick the closest weekend.
Yeah.
And I usually get to choose where we go for dinner. But one year I was generous and I said, I'm going to take you out for beer and wings, and we're going to go see, I think one of the Mission Impossible movies was coming out or something. So we went to go see stuff that blew up. And movies where stuff blows up. That's like one of Mike's favorite movies. Is blowing up movies. Like my favorite date, if I got to choose.
April 25th is the perfect day.
No. My favorite date, if I got to choose, would be going to the theater. So one year he took me to the ballet. We saw Romeo and Juliet, which was fun. I'd never been to the Atlanta Ballet. It was great fun.
So this wasn't for Valentine's Day, but for a couple of years before we had kids, we had season passes to the Fox Theater in downtown Atlanta, and they do a mix of things. So there's a lot of plays. We saw The Music Man, and then I cannot live down the fact that I made my husband see Riverdance because he hates it.
That's when
He's generally not a fan of anything. Now that I think about it, except me, which is probably why he went.
We had tickets to the Fox, and one year Patti LuPone came and sang a concert of her favorite love songs or whatever, or her favorite songs. Mike's like, you need to take somebody else to this. So he just gave me the tickets and I got to pick a friend. Hey, will you go on a date with me? Because Mike's not going. So,
I mean, my husband does do an awesome recreation
of Riverdance.
Yeah.
That may have been worth it then. He didn't do it at our party.
No, he's probably saving it for some big anniversary.
Well, the next one we are gonna have Garrett's Riverdance. Oh. Maybe we could get a video.
I doubt it.
Could it be,
You may have heard his
secret
voice on the
contraband
last
video?
Night, yeah.
No,
I don't think that essence, that magical essence, cannot be captured on film. It's like a vampire; you just can't. It doesn't appear.
There you go.
He just, you saw we got family pictures taken over Christmas break. Every picture, my husband just looks like he's in the Secret Service, just standing there.
He's your guard.
Like he changed position, maybe like an inch, but every picture. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just devolving into silliness.
Well, as you do.
Which really represents our Valentine's Day, honestly. It's kind of like, well, we have kids. I guess we got to love them too.
I made, Valentine's Day, growing up though, Valentine's Day was really special to my dad. I'm not sure why, but he always got us the neatest presents on Valentine's Day. So.
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to get candy from my mom in college and like care packages for Valentine's Day.
Yes, that was always good.
My husband asked, like, oh, do you want, giant Reese's peanut butter cup or whatever? It's like, no. Just one card's fine.
I should have worn that necklace today. My dad took a silver dollar, like a 1900 Lady Liberty silver dollar, and had it put into with a chain. That's one of my favorite. I like that necklace. I should have worn that instead of this one. Anyway.
Oh, well.
But I like Valentine's Day. I don't feel like you have to participate in the rules of.
No. I mean, my husband's like, oh, do you want anything? Pick a holiday. My birthday, Christmas, Thanksgiving. What do you want? I would like clean bathrooms. Ta-da! And there you go.
Yeah, no.
Romantic gesture.
I usually get flowers.
Yeah, I kind of told him to knock it off. After I had my first child and I was in the hospital, and I'm like, I have created a new life. Go me. shoot, now I have to keep this thing alive. And people sent a whole bunch of flowers. I'm like, I got a lot of pressure to keep these flowers alive too. I had like one house plant, and it was like, but this is not really Sophie's choice. I don't want to make too much of it, but like between the philodendron and my son, I was like, one of these is easier, and I've known a lot longer, and I know is reliable, and this other thing's screaming a whole lot. It's a tough choice. So far, everyone tells me I made the right choice, but I do miss that philodendron. So I'm not big on flowers anymore.
Well, we talked in the last episode. I come from a family of florists, so flowers are kind of a big deal.
I appreciate
like
them, and they're
flowers.
beautiful, and you get this big, gorgeous arrangement, and then they like die at different rates, and then you just end up like this sad half
roses.
cluster.
Roses are my favorite. Well, roses are one of my favorites. I've kind of got 3 favorites, but roses, gardenias, and lily of the valley are big to me.
I'm partial to gardenias.
I love gardenias. That was in my bouquet.
It was in my bouquet, and also the tiare flower in French Polynesia is from the gardenia family, and we went to Tahiti and Bora Bora for a honeymoon.
Oh,
so
wow.
I have a special place for gardenias.
That is the other side of the world.
Yes. Oh gosh, there was a very long flight next to a very stinky Frenchman from LA. I can't sleep here. But it was a wonderful honeymoon.
Well, there you go. We went to Disney World. I loved it. It was awesome.
We went to where we wouldn't have to talk to people. Yes. And we found a dog we liked.
There you go.
Napoleon the beach dog. I don't think that was his real name. We named him because he was small and mighty, very fluffy.
So Mike usually gets me roses, quintessential Valentine's Day gift, and I get to go out to dinner. And I usually pick the same place every year. So
yeah, we usually end up going out with the kids, or I will just cook something at home, like, hey, we're having steak, kind of like last week when we had steak, or whatever.
Yeah. So, but I like Valentine's Day. It's fun.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's good. Lots of love. Love is good. Anyway, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today we're actually going to be talking about curve piecing because, we put out the stripper's knot pattern, and then there's a lot of people like, I don't know about that curve thing, because
curves.
I think sometimes sewers gravitate to quilting when they lose confidence about sewing clothing. Because clothing, 3-dimensional.
You got sleeves and...
Ideally. Not on your pants, but yes.
Yeah, but you got curves on your hips and sleeves.
Yeah, you do.
And body, if your body types have curves.
There's not a 2-dimensional person out there. Like, even models still have, 3 dimensions. So they're like, well, I purposely stopped sewing clothes so I wouldn't have to sew curves. And we're like, ta-da, curves. Oh, dang it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we hung this sideways.
Oh, well.
Nobody's going to know.
No.
Except for me. It's sideways.
You just look interested at it. Like, oh,
you looking at it like this. Anyway. I know because the quilting's sideways.
So in the cover picture for the pattern, where we've got solid fabrics here, where there's patterns, it is stratas of fabric. So different widths of strips sewn together kind of as a made fabric.
Which was the original design.
And then I was like,
and then I turned it into Pam, and she's like, that's a lot of work. I was like,
I will make a layer. I will make it out of a layer cake.
So she was, yeah.
So this is the version that I had made just out of a layer cake because I didn't want to fiddle with all that nonsense. Because I was already like, you're making me do curve piecing. I ain't down with that.
It's a gorgeous quilt, though.
And it, honestly, a lot of people say this about a lot of stuff in quilting. Like, it's not as hard as it looks. It's really not.
I don't think curve piecing is hard.
And even in doing this, I use a total of 1 pin in the center.
Yep.
When you're putting all these bits together. And what it comes down to, I think depending on how you approach quilting, the cutting is the most arduous process, particularly with curves, because if you don't cut the curves right and you're a little jaggedy off, and when you do sew it, you get some weird lumps. But one thing worth pointing out, when you are cutting any kind of curve, whether it's this or a tighter curve or anything, it's always better to use a smaller rotary cutter. Because you can turn that radius, a tighter radius. Slow down. And use, this is a 28 millimeter. Usually I cut with a 45, and I think you use 45 and a 60 as well. Yep. But curve piecing, definitely use a smaller rotary cutter.
Yes.
Now, we use templates for this. There's a plastic template set that we use, and we also provided the paper version of this, so you could cut it out and do it yourself.
And these are the templates we used. They're from Elisa's Back Porch Design. And the reason you felt me pull them apart is I put double stick tape on them so that when you put it against your fabric, it just holds it enough that your fabric doesn't move as you're cutting that curve, and it'll give you a smoother cut.
Now, you can also, there's like sandpaper dots and all kinds of stuff you can stick on the back, but particularly, honestly, with any ruler, not just curves, but when you're worried and a little anxious about trying something new, having it secure against the fabric definitely helps.
Yeah. And you can replace the double stick tape. It's easy to peel off and put some more back on.
Did you ever cut multiple layers?
Yeah.
Up to how many would you go?
Maybe 3 at the most.
Yeah.
2 is probably enough.
Yeah, when I'm cutting normal straight lines, the most I will go is around 4 to 6.
6, yeah.
Beyond that, it gets kind of dodgy.
4 I'm comfortable with. 6 it depends on what it is.
Yeah. If it's half square triangles, probably 4.
Yeah.
Anything on a bias, 4 layers at most.
4 I feel comfortable with. 6 I'm pushing it.
6 is like, well, I got a bunch of squares I got to cut. And
yeah, I'm trying to get done. Yeah. But 2 is usually good for curve piecing. Yeah. I don't try to, just because the more accurate your cutting is, the more accurate your piecing is. So if you keep that accuracy throughout the whole process, then it's much easier to go together. And the reason we kind of brought up Valentine's Day, but this block right here is traditionally called the lover's knot. So, did you know it? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's why we named the quilt stripper's knot.
Oh, that's right. Ha! So, but what's nice about curve piecing is like 2 curves and you're done. It's quick. It is a quick quilt to put together.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you ever done curved piecing without using a template?
Yes, because I've used that ruler.
No, but okay, so we're pointing to the quick curve ruler, and we both made quilts from this. I did a baby quilt out of it with one of the patterns provided with a ruler, and this is from So Kind of Wonderful. Now, the way she writes her patterns for this, because it's just a single curve, and she's got at least 10 patterns, I think, using this. And what this particular one relies on is you use the same curve for both your convex and your concave piece, and you stitch them together, and then you go in and do some trimming. And there's a lot of trimming in these steps, which
lots of trimming with that ruler.
Not necessarily everybody's jam. It drove me a little nuts, but to me it was worth it at the end.
It did turn out a very nice quilt. I forget what episode it was, but it was Velveeta cheese is not real cheese.
It was one of the November episodes.
Yeah, we used that ruler.
Yeah, and that was for a double wedding ring version.
Yeah.
So it is a good way if you want to do a pieced set-in double wedding ring.
Right, which was, I think their pattern was called Metro Rings.
We'll check.
Yeah.
Because I think I've got it as well.
Yeah.
So this is one, and when you are piecing a block and you go in and do more trimming, it's usually going to end up more accurate. As opposed to this, where it's cut to size, you sew it, and you're like, well, I hope it works. Now, for us, it did. You know?
Yeah.
But this one, because you are trimming, you do get extra bits of fabric and stuff that you end up squaring it up, and it works okay. But again, you use your 28 millimeter. You can't really fit a 45 in here.
No,
it's too
definitely
big.
Small. And I like the 28. There's a smaller one than this, a smaller ruler or cutter than this. Yes, there is.
What?
Yeah. Don't use that one because it's too small.
Then why even bring it up?
Because because you could buy it accidentally. So look for the 28.
Oh, that's right. It's like the little teeny
yeah.
toy-looking one.
It is, yes. So don't buy that one.
Now, have you done curve piecing with neither a template or a ruler?
Yes.
Yes.
Like freeform curve piecing? Yes, I have.
Now, what has been your experience with that?
It gets all whacker-jawed.
That's not a word.
I know. Whopper-jawed.
Whopper-jawed. That's closer. Which may also not be a real word, but it's one I've heard before.
Jabberwocky. I'm throwing out Alice in Wonderland things. Anyway, it gets, when you cut like a freeform curve and you sew it back together, I always have like this way extra stuff at one end.
Yeah, that's how it works.
It's not.
So with that technique, you could start with 2 fat quarters and layer them both right sides up or right sides down, as long as they're both the same direction. And then think of a car window. Not a Volvo, too boxy. Think of a regular car window. Sorry, Volvo. Love you. Feel free to sponsor us, but not for this. This segment not brought to you by Volvo or pickup trucks or semi-trucks. So we think of the curve of like a sedan or that kind of curve is about as severe as you want to go in an angle. So you get your two fabrics stacked, and you just do your little car window curve. Whoop. And then you mix it because you got two pieces of fabric. You put the concave of one with the convex of the other.
Concave is inside, convex is outside.
Yes. Remember,
Sticking
concave because
out.
you cave in.
Yeah.
And sew those together.
Right.
And then you can do more curved piecing, like layer those pieces back together again, do more curved cuts if you want. Or you could do straight cuts and piece in like a third strip of fabric if you want to make it interesting.
Very freeform, improvisational, harder than you think. For it to look good, I think it is harder than you think. We did this for
getting
a modern
the
quilt
color
give.
and the contrast of the pieces is harder than you think. The actual technique, not that hard.
Agree with that.
Once you come to realize that, there is going to be this big weird leftover chunk here at the end, and no, that's totally normal. Don't freak out.
We did a quilts that we gave away to.
So we did solid fabrics.
Or
I don't.
We used print and solid fabrics.
Yes. So in the guild, everyone got either one of 2 or 3 orange solids, or 2 or 3 blue solids.
Orange and blue, shocking.
I know, we were in charge of it, so
yeah,
that's what you get, guild.
Hey.
And then everyone brought in their own print fabric to pair with it and make a set of these blocks. And we ultimately, starting with 2 fat quarters, ended up trimming them to about 8 inches by 16, I think, because I was the one that ultimately put them together. And it made these really interesting blocks.
It was an interesting quilt.
And then we just pieced them all together. I think we ended up making 4 quilts?
Yes.
4 quilts? Yeah.
It was 4.
So a fun exercise. And because it was a guild project, the pressure was off, that it wasn't like, I got to go make a bunch of these weird
And we
blocks.
were giving away, so. And it was a way the guild could, practice curve piecing and practice improv piecing and stuff.
Yeah, but car window is like the nice gentle arc.
I've never thought about a car window.
Mm-hmm. Not a Volvo.
I wouldn't have gone there anyway. Could you take like a dinner plate or something and just trace that?
You could, but when you get on that tight a radius for your curve,
it's hard to do. I agree.
Blech.
I'm trying to think
because
of
you
something
can't do a
else.
whole circle.
I'm trying to think of something else like that people would have that's not a car window. It's not like you can go out to your car.
You don't trace your car window. You just think, about that tightness of a curve.
Right.
You don't need to go trace your car.
Okay.
Or trace someone else's car, heaven forbid. Get arrested. That's not good.
So that reminds me of a story. So I was traveling.
Here we go.
And I was in business, so you rent a car. So I'd gone out to my car to, put my stuff in it because I was headed to the airport, headed home. Put all my stuff in this car, got in the car, put the key in the ignition, turned it on, and it wouldn't start. And I was like, what's the deal? And I look over, and there's a Hertz rental car, contract in the passenger seat. And I'm like, I always rent from Avis. So the car next to mine that I was currently in, this stranger's rental car, that the key fob opened and everything. So I was like trying to grab my stuff out of it because I didn't want somebody to come in and think that I was stealing their rental car. But it was the same. It was an SUV, same color. It was just parked right next to it. I picked the wrong one. Oops. But the key worked. That's what made me put my stuff in there. Because it's not like it was your license tag that you would recognize or something. Yep. So that's me. That is my one time I've ever tried to steal a car.
You're not very good at it.
No.
I see why you didn't keep it up as a career choice.
It is. Wasn't a wise choice. So
No.
I got in the Avis car and got to the airport and I made it home. There you go.
Huzzah. All was saved.
With all was saved. So back to curve piecing. Sorry.
Back to curve piecing.
I enjoy curve piecing because it's a quick quilt to put together.
Well, you get a lot of dynamic interest in the blocks without a tremendous amount of piecing, which is nice. I mean, unless you're doing her version of Strippers and all that craziness. You got time for that.
It's very dynamic though. But essentially for this block, you have this L shape and you sew 2 cornerstones on one side of the L. And then you have this L shape. So how you put the block together is you sew the smaller L to this side of the curve first, iron it, and then because you've added these 2 cornerstones, you sew this curve second. So it's essentially like 4 seams and you've got a block, which makes it really quick to put together. This was an easy quilt to do. And the thing, okay, so when you're sewing the curve, do you sew with the convex side on the bottom with your concave side
Yes.
on top?
Because to me that
you can do
the
it either
concave
way.
is
but,
where there's
yeah.
more give, and I want to see where that is, because if you
Right.
flipped it the other way, you're more likely to get a weird pucker.
Right.
Which I did, I think, on 1 or 2 of mine, and I just
Yeah.
seam ripped it and then kind of smoothed it out and stitched it back down.
So I pin it in the middle.
Yep.
And then I start in this corner, and this is my bottom piece, and then I put this on top. And I've gotten to where I don't even have to pin it anymore, honestly. Slow down. That's the key. Slow down. Don't speed demon through this. This is not piecing squares. Do you do it fast? You're looking at me like you do. I slow down. Just slow down. Take your time.
I got time for that. Pedal to the metal, baby.
Yeah.
Now, when I pressed it, all of mine kind of naturally went to where this piece is folded under. So you can, if you get a close up on here,
Yeah.
you'll see that the concave piece is the piece of fabric that's pressed away from.
Right.
So I ended up using a lot of steam, and that just kind of helped the curve settle down first, and then just a straight flat press down on
Yes.
it, not a back and
No,
forth
you
motion,
don't do
'cause you
that.
get a
It's
weird.
flat press.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's it's easy to do.
It is easy to do. Do you know what I call this quilt? Secretly?
Secretly, what do you call it?
Boots and pants.
Boots and pants. Why?
Because there's a bunch of bees in it. And
Bees.
you know my jam.
Yeah.
Boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and bees, boots and pants. Kind of goes on.
Yeah. That's good. I thought it was honoring your alma mater.
Yeah, sure. I went to Georgia Tech, Yellow Jackets, but
And there's bees and it's
There's
yellow
bees.
and stuff. I wrote in this quilt, like I did the quilting on it. So I wrote like honey and bees on it. And I drew little honey hives, beehives.
and you should have quilted boots and pants in there somewhere, but you didn't. It's okay.
I didn't quilt boots and pants. You didn't tell me to quilt that in it. So I like her.
I just kept
piecing.
sending you like boots and pants emoticons while I was making it.
Oh, that's right. You did. I remember that now. Didn't apparently help because I just quilted
Just thought I was being
honey
funny.
and bees and then in the edges I actually drew out some bees.
It's very meta. It's bees on bees.
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 So no boots and pants, but
No
bees.
boots and pants. So we're going to let you take a closer look at the bee quilt, and you can buy the digital pattern to make your own version at shop.thestitchtvshow.com.
Okay, we're back.
So this is, Lynn said, we should talk about this. And I was like, great. What does it mean? So I know what it means. Measuring progress in quilting.
Right. Do you measure your progress in quilting?
Define, like
Okay.
with a ruler, or make notes and brag, or tweet about it? Like, what are we measuring?
All of those kinds of things. Yes. A lot of people ask me, and how long does it take you to quilt something? How long does it take you to make a quilt?
I love it. How long did it take to make?
How long do you get?
It took forever.
It took forever. It doesn't take forever. Do you ever keep track of of how much time it takes you from the start of a quilt to the end of a quilt?
Not in terms of number of hours, but I will frequently look back and say, oh, I started this 2 months ago based on Instagram, Twitter, whatever.
Well, I've got a friend, she actually tracks how long it takes her to cut, how long it takes her to piece, how long it takes her to quilt the quilts. I mean, I know in quilting, like I can look at this and say, this probably took me 12 hours to quilt.
And the point of tracking is because she is pricing her work later, or because
that could be part of it. I mean, when people say, "Oh, will you make me a quilt?" Do you take that into consideration? Do you take into consideration how long it takes you to do the whole quilt, or are you just like, "Yeah, I'll do one for you. Here's the bottom line price."
Well, as we've talked on previous episode, I only do commissions for one particular person.
Right, exactly. But a lot of people out there do commissions for people. So how would you price that, or how do you think that? I mean, I think measuring the progress of how long it takes to do something. Like, how valuable are we? You know?
Well, would you price your time differently? Like, well, I'm better at quilting than I am at cutting. So for cutting, I would only give myself $10 an hour, but for quilting, I would give myself 20 to 25. Would you break it up that way? Or?
Yeah, you could, definitely. Or you could say, okay, and I am better at quilting than I think I am at other aspects, but and it depends on the type of quilting. Like heirloom quilting is going to be a lot more expensive than this.
So what's your 16 drunk monkeys in a room full of typewriters rate? Pounding out Shakespeare.
Well, I think, I mean, I know people who, if you ask them to do curved piecing because it's more difficult, they would charge more because curved piecing's more, it's a higher skill set than if you're making a quilt that is just like 4 patches or 9 patches.
Would the cost be more because it took them more time to do the piecing and cutting, or would it cost more because they gave themselves a higher hourly rate?
Well, do you give yourself a higher hourly rate, or do you consider time as a factor in it? Do you just say, okay,
as a skilled quilter, I believe I deserve to be paid $20 to $22 an hour, or whatever that rate is, given geography and country and all that.
Yeah, because it's more than hourly wage.
If you have to slow down and it takes more time, then naturally $20 an hour for making 4 patches, which is going to go quicker, versus $20 an hour for making curved pieces, which is going to take longer.
Right.
Technically, you would end up,
making
because of math, make more.
You would make more money because this is more difficult quilt.
But you didn't necessarily give yourself a higher hourly rate.
Correct. But because it took more time.
So I'm right.
She's always right.
And that's all for this episode.
No, but I think that that's an interesting question. Do you think it's important that we as a quilting community understand that and take that into account? Because I don't think we do.
I don't think we do. I think we have a base lizard brain emotional understanding of people that are quilt worthy.
Okay, who's quilt worthy?
People that know how to take care of a quilt. And I'm not saying like, oh, they let their dog sleep on it. Like, whatever, dogs sleep on my quilt all the time.
Yeah,
and that's the point of quilts at my house.
Some of my quilts dogs sleep on.
Right.
It depends on what.
But if you give someone, say, a portrait quilt, like we talked about in the last episode, and they're like, oh, my cat loves to lay on that in the sunspot. No. That person not quilt worthy.
No, not quilt worthy. Or I gave a quilt to somebody, or I showed a quilt to somebody, and they go, look at the back. And I was like, seriously? There was no work done on the back. It was all like massively pieced on the front.
Yeah.
Not quilt worthy.
So in that, I mean, that quilt worthiness is more of an issue in gifting quilts.
Right.
If someone's paying for it, like if they want to pay $1 bajillion for a piece of art to have their dog lay on, well, good luck to them having so much free cash.
Well, I think it was interesting because actually yesterday I was in a quilt show meeting, and one of the things that we're doing in our quilt show is we have quilt consignment. So as quilters, you can put a quilt in the quilt consignment, and the show gets a percentage of the sale. So, and that way the guild makes money, but you as a quilter actually sell your stuff. So we talked yesterday and we said, okay, last show, what sold? And I think we sold, I don't know.
5?
No, I think it was more than that. It was
12-ish.
Yeah, I thought it was like
11
or 12 quilts.
One of them was mine.
And the average price of the quilts that sold, and most of them were lap quilts that sold, so they were about this size. They weren't, queen or king size quilts. Most of them were lap quilts that sold. The average price was like $275.
That's how much mine sold for, I think. And it was smaller than this. It was a baby size, and it was leftover Bonnie Hunter mystery quilt.
Yeah. But how long did it take you to make that? And did, so $275, if you're making $20 an hour, you're getting that quilt done, okay, math person, in what, 12 hours? 15 hours? That seems like a short. So do you know?
But it was, for me, it was a choice between, well, if this doesn't sell, I'm going to donate it.
That's true.
And so for me, it was a matter of I can either get 275 or I can get 0.
But do you price it out when you price a quilt out for that kind of thing?
If there were
do you take into consideration the time that it took you to put into that?
If I were making quilts purely for the purpose of selling them, yes, I would price them differently than I do. Or when it's consignment, if this quilt is serving no purpose in my house, no one's going to use it. I will either donate it or I will sell it.
Right.
Then, which may be to the detriment of the rest of the market.
Oh, it
where
definitely
someone else
the
did the same Bonnie Hunter one, and they're like, "This is my favorite quilt," and
And Bonnie Hunters take a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of time. I mean,
Bananas
there's a
pieces.
lot of
Yeah.
bananas cutting and bananas piecing, and they're gorgeous. So, I mean, now, as an appraiser, a pantograph, quilt is not as valuable
as a custom quilt.
As a custom quilting job. So,
well, and mine was an all over meander, I'm sure. I don't remember exactly, but
yeah.
So from that perspective, mine was 0 or 275.
Right.
And I don't know that it was 275.
So
exactly.
it doesn't matter to you how long it takes?
In that particular instance, no, but I would not have put in a queen size quilt for that same price. In fact, I did have a queen size quilt that I put in at a much higher price.
And it did
sell.
Yeah. I told him, when we were discussing it, I said, we have to have the range in there, though. Mm-hmm. You need to have the baby quilts there, the lap size quilts there, and then the queen size quilts there. And you need to have them priced from, $150 to $700-800.
And there were several
$1,500, whatever dollars, depending upon how complicated the quilt is, how much detail work is in it, and what value that person sees in it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just wondered if measuring your progress in how long it takes you to do complete tasks is important to determining price, or is important to determining value for.
If that was
it is when I consider appraisals.
Well, if I were in quilting for the explicit purpose of making money on consignment quilts or making quilts for sale, it would. But because I'm not, it doesn't.
Yeah. So you're not pricing it that way. I think a lot, I would say, and people can comment, but I would say most of the quilters aren't in it for making money from, because there's not a market. Do you think it's because we train the people? Like we train general population?
I think because handmade quilts are compared to quilts you can buy at the store
for $100,
for $100 or $150 if you're lucky, because there is that comparison, and it's, someone still had to make that quilt, but they were definitely not getting paid $20-25 an hour.
Yeah. So that's what a friend of mine actually challenged me once, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have the patience or the organization to keep up with it. But she actually has a program that she's downloaded for
like a timekeeping?
It was a timekeeping program that work uses, and I forget what kind of job or work uses it. But I guess it's the same kind of thing of, a car mechanic or something, keep your car theme. A car mechanic would be about labor.
The window. Cars? What?
You were talking about car windows. It took us 3.5 hours of labor. Mm-hmm. So, and they charge per hour, segments. I think that's the type of program she had an app for downloaded to keep track of, okay, I spent, 6 hours cutting, and I spent whatever piecing, because it takes a while. I just don't think people think a general population out there doesn't understand how long it takes.
Well, no, and because so many of us do this as a hobby and don't necessarily define it as a business or a way that we make money,
agree.
We carry that the language that we use to talk about it reflects that it is a hobby more frequently than not.
Right. But do we measure? I guess I think it would be interesting, even if it's just a hobby, to measure how long it takes you to do. Because you can't say 2 months, because you're not spending 12 hours a day for 2 months on one quilt. I mean, you could.
You did for a week.
Yeah, I did. Well, not really. I mean, I did other stuff. I read and I went to see the Clydesdales and I went and had dinner and did other stuff. But I did do that last quilt that we had in a couple episodes ago
Diamonds Are Forever.
in 8 days. And I watched a couple movies. Well, I watched a lot of movies during it. It was like a lot.
BANANAS. Bananas.
A lot. Anyway, yeah, I just thought, and I think it's interesting to think about.
Well, interesting, but I don't know that the casual quilter is going to think about it that way and is going to be interested in doing that. Because a lot of people are not math people.
Yes, but I thought you would be interested in being, spreadsheet math person.
I'm interested in it to the point that it does not interfere with my ability to do the thing I actually want to do. I would actually like to make quilts and not spend all my time tracking quilts. I get aggravated writing blog posts. That's why I frequently forget. Because I'm like, I'd rather actually be quilting than writing about quilting. Sorry. So, yes, as long as it does not interfere with the actual doing of the thing.
Oh, okay.
Nerd.
I actually pay attention for appraisal of how long it takes to do certain things. Because then when I look at how the value of a quilt for reconstruction of a quilt, I take that into consideration. Yeah, but this takes a little bit longer. And that is appraisal. Yeah. Appraiser, you have to do that. So I pay attention to this. So, and like this quilt compared to the original Stripper's Knot doesn't take as long. So this one's not, can't be valued as much. But I do think it's interesting. I don't know. And I think that you can measure your progress. I'm a much faster quilter now than I was 10 years ago. You put more quilts together than you did. So, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about.
Well,
she doesn't care.
If you're a big old nerd like Lynn and you just enjoy the process, let us know. And that's all we have for this episode. Today's show could not happen without 77 Peaches Enterprises, your one-stop shop for creative support.
We'd like to thank 77 Peaches, Big Think Productions, Cotton Art Studio, Hip to be a Square for being part of The Stitch. You can find links to their site on our show site, thestitchtvshow.com. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, please email us at info@thestitchtvshow.com.
If you'd enjoyed the show, please do like it on YouTube. Share your thoughts on this episode's topics on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and tag us with #TheStitchTVShow. The next virtual Stitch-In is going to be Friday, March 17th at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern, broadcast on our channel here on YouTube and on our blog. My podcast, Hip to be a Square, is out Fridays at hiptobeasquarepodcast.com or in iTunes or Google Play.
And you can email us with questions or comments at info@thestitchtvshow.com and buy our patterns at shop.thestitchtvshow.com.
All those details and more can be found on our website that we're not going to mention.
I
just said we're not going to mention it.
Oh, sorry.
Zip it.
Tune in next time for more quilting chat with friends.